But I want to get cranking with one of my favorite speakers of all time, one of my favorite mentors. Like I said to a bunch of you guys, I think we've done like five or 600 mentors, and Rick is definitely on my all-star team as my cleanup hitter. So I just truly love the advice, the guidance, the mentorship, and his love for this community is unmatched. So I'm just honored, Rick, that you're able to come back again and join us. Quickly about him, and then I'll let him introduce himself. But Rick was a nurse in the Army, and from there he went on to start his own business called Medtrust. So this was doing government contracting with medical staffing. It was extremely successful and had a nice exit from that. Went on to work for entrepreneurs. An organization that trains other entrepreneurs. So he was one of their lead trainers. He started another business where he does ghostwriting for people, and currently he is the VP of Government Operations at a company called Medcentrek, which he'll tell you briefly about. But the reason I wanted Rick to come on again today is because he is a master storyteller. I don't think there's anyone better who can get an engaging, exciting point across. And as you guys know, because we've spent so much time practicing it, I feel nothing more important that you can do than invest in yourself and your stories so you can get these across to hiring managers, and it will make all the difference in you getting the job that you want. So, Rick, thank you, buddy, for coming on again and spending time with the crew.
Hey, Jordy, it's my pleasure, and I'm so glad to be here. There's a good crowd on here. Wow, I'm
We're
looking to.
growing.
Yeah, wow. I really appreciate everything Jordy said, and I think I've been on maybe four times, and it's usually with new cohorts, and
Yep.
it's truly a privilege. I really think it's a privilege for myself to give back in this way, especially for all the soon-to-be veterans. I'm guessing everybody here is in some stage of transition, and likely all branches, probably Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and I
Space
don't know,
Force. We
Space
got a
Force.
Space Force
Wow.
too. Yeah, we got them all. Yep.
Wow.
We got
Man,
them all.
that's
It's
crazy.
I know. So what I want to do is I'm going to hand this off to you because you don't need me to ask questions. I'm going to let you do your thing. And then if we can, I'd like to save some time at like 40 after. So it'd be 20 of. I'd like to call on a couple people to tell you their little, I want them to say their little answer to the question, tell me about yourself, because I want you to critique them. Because I just heard three of them, four of them, and they were unbelievably, I thought they were just outstanding. So I'd love to get your thoughts on them. So
For sure.
anyway, take it away. Tell everyone a little bit about your background and what you do now and stuff. So go ahead.
Sure. And Jordy, just for clarity, so I will, I'm one time I talked about that STAR framework, that STA.
Yep.
Do you want to kind of go back into, okay, good.
Yeah,
Just want to,
absolutely. And then you're go ahead. You know what to do.
yeah. So, first of all, I'm going to speak very frankly and openly. We've all worn the uniform at some point in time, and we know that clarity is better than being clever. In other words, I just get straight to the point and say what needs to be said. So, I was an Army nurse, and that was in right after 9/11. But the even deeper truth, and I'm going to age myself, is I was actually enlisted. I was at the late 80s and early 90s. So that's kind of I'm dating myself. I flunked out of college back in nine. I graduated from high school in '85. I flunked out of college after excelling and beer drinking and playing pool, and did very good at that. And my parents promptly ceased paying for college, and they basically told me to figure it out. So I didn't have a tough childhood, but I had to earn my way, if you will. And I was one of those. I'm probably like everybody here. We have a certain level of intelligence, and I know I was smart. I just don't know that I was cut out for college, and I didn't know what to do. So I joined the Army, and I was a E1. Actually, I was an E3 because I had some college credits, so they gave me some rank for having credits. But I went in as a private, and I was what's called a single channel radio operator, which is no longer in existence. Now everything's digital. And the reason why I mention that is because I had absolutely no transferable skills when I was ready to leave the military. Nothing. I couldn't become a radio operator in any job. There's only the Army needed radio operators. And I literally carried one of those old school radios on my back. And there's not a single job in existence then or today where you carry one of those on your back for a living. So, lesson number one is uh, is I had to figure out the skills that I was given, that I was taught in the Army. How do I transfer that? And we're going to talk about that. But more so, how do I make them so unique that an employer says, I want this guy. I need this girl. I need this person, because it's not about the job they did. It's about what they did, how they did it, and how they responded. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. But I went to nursing school, and my ex-wife's a physician, so I went. I was always I was always wanting to do something medically related. So I became a registered nurse, have a 4-year degree, and I graduated in 1995. And it was about the year 2000 where I was bit by that entrepreneurial bug, and I started a company. And the reason is I bet it's a lot of the reasons why everybody's here. It's, there's something more. And the more it can be more money, the more it can be more opportunity, the more it can be whatever it is. And you should never be ashamed to say the more is, I want to make more money. Nothing wrong with that. It's the American way. It's how we feed our kids, how we buy our clothes, how we get our advanced degrees, how we pay for our mortgages. That was part of it for me. I always knew though that there was more out there. So I started a company which was very unsexy. It's called staffing. I put nurses into hospitals. That is it. Unsexy. I realized after about a year that I was now an entrepreneur. I was a nurse with no business background, no business training, and we were now placing nurses into hospitals. I found myself responsible for their well-being, for paying them, for making sure they had benefits, and I was an employer slash CEO slash custodian, you name it. I did everything at the company, and then 9/11 happened. And I was a reservist at the time, a reserve Army nurse, because I did go back in. Actually, I wasn't. It was 9/11 that compelled me to go back in. And I went in as a reservist because I was at the time also a CEO of a fast growth company. We now had about 50 employees based here in San Antonio. And I say that because remember, I was just a radio operator who flunked out of college. Let that sink in. No MBA, no business being an entrepreneur, except I felt I was called to do something more and to give back in a greater way. Everybody can relate to that in some way, shape, or form. Everybody on this call. 9/11 happened. I knew I was going to be activated. It wasn't a matter of if, but when. So I had to learn how to hire people, hire high level people, and I hired a CEO to replace me. My wife at the time, my wife now actually of 25 years, took over as the COO role. And of course, I was activated. And the story I'm going to share, I'll tell about later, but I served at Walter Reed as an active duty Army nurse, and I learned a big deal about how to run a business when you're not there. And it's through systems, processes, SOPs. And guess what? It's the thing that the military teaches us each and every day. We learn how systems, processes, SOPs, and how to fine tune those, then how to manage them, then oversee them, and then find people who can do them better than us. You see, everything I'm talking about here is everything I learned from the skill sets of being a private in the Army with no transferable skills. You see, each and every person here has a very distinct and unique skill set that the Navy taught you, the Army taught you, the Marine Corps taught you, Space Force taught you. Who did I leave out? Air Force. You have been given the opportunities that a lot of people, for me, it was an opportunity as a last ditch hope. I joined. The skills I came out with of discipline, esprit de corps, understanding hierarchy, understanding when to keep my mouth shut and when to speak up was a big deal. And also understanding that there was more out there. If I had stayed, I could have probably, to this day, maybe retired as a full bird colonel. So all that to say is learned a lot. The company kept growing, and the story I'm going to share is this. And everybody here has a military story, whether you were in the sandbox or not, whether you're in the rear with the gear like I was. And I'm not here to insult anybody because I was one of those REMFs. They call them rear echelon motherfuckers. That was me. I never deployed ever. I was active duty for a total of about 7 years through Gulf One, through Desert Storm, and I never deployed. I never did. So I never stepped in theater. All of my active duty time was in generally some large military base stateside, either at SAMC, which or the old BAMC here, or Walter Reed. But I'll never forget is after I was activated. Now, mind you, I was a trained trauma nurse. ER trauma was my specialty. And this is alongside me building a business. So, and I'm a good trauma nurse. I know my stuff. And my role as a reservist, soon to be active duty, was I was the OIC. It was an emergency department of what's called a forward surgical team, an FST. An FST is a far forward. Think of a modern day cache, which was they deployed all over Afghanistan and Iraq. Now think about the people, a small surgical team from the cache who goes even further upstream or into the desert or into wherever, so you can perform life-sustaining surgeries from a tent in the middle of nowhere. That's what I was trained to do as an emergency nurse and to run a small team. I went to Walter Reed and I was just so disappointed. I was because I had all the identifiers as the trauma nurse, as a leader, as an OIC, and I was at that time first lieutenant, about to be captain. So I even had time and grade. And they sent me to Walter Reed. I thought for sure I'm going to go to the emergency department there, Washington, D.C., back in 2006 and 7. And the answer was no. Uncle Sam had a different plan for me. And I ended up going to Ward 58, which was a basic medical surgical ward where brand new butter bar lieutenants, straight out of nursing school, that's where they trained. And I was even more disappointed. In fact, I was starting to get a little angry that I'm like, I feel like it was wasted talent. And again, so what you're hearing is my ego was talking back then. So I didn't understand why I was sent there. I didn't understand a lot of things. I didn't understand why I had all these identifiers. I had trained with the team to deploy far forward with an FST, and I was sent to Ward 58 in Washington, D.C. But I sucked it up and you drive on because that's what we do. It's what you do. You have no choice. Unless you sit in the Oval Office, you have no choice but to suck it up. And so that's what I did. You ain't got to like it. You just got to do it, right? Get to Walter Reed in process, and I get to my first actual day as an active duty Army nurse, first lieutenant on Ward 58. And we wore ACUs. I don't know what they call them now, but back then it was we didn't wear scrubs. We wore uniforms on the floor. And introduce my first patient, get my assignment, and I go to the door, knock on it. The door opens up, and I look in there, and there's a young, probably private E2 trying to get out of bed. And I see him holding his mom's hand from across the bed. And the room isn't very big, but it's big enough that it's kind of across the room. And he's trying to stand up. And I look at him and just something was off. And I didn't know what until I knew what. And the what was this: he was missing an eye, missing an ear, half of one of his legs was gone, and he was missing part of a hand. And that's what hit me. He was trying to get up because I was an officer walking into his room. And I get goosebumps telling the story even right now because I knew at that moment, this is why I was here. That was why that troop was the reason I was sent to Walter Reed. I didn't know it. I even thought about questioning it, but that was the moment I knew this is why I was sent to Walter Reed. I spent a year and a half there. It was a very long activation. And I saw troops like him over and over and over, missing legs, missing arms, TBI, you name it, parts of their skull removed because their brains had swelled up so much. And I realized that this is the reason I was there, to take care of these troops, to take care of their families, to make sure they had the best possible treatment. Because when they left me, they were going back into the world. Like today, when you leave me, you're going to go into the world. So I gave it my all. I gave it my best. And it was the best job of my entire 30 something years as a nurse, that 18 months there. It was hard because they would come to Andrews Air Base, we'd take them off the jets, and they'd be in pieces. And we had to put them back together to the best we could and then send them home. And it was over and over and over. There's a lot of lessons I'm taking that. And I want you to keep that story in mind because, again, I was in the rear with the gear, so to speak. I never deployed far. I was never in the desert, never. I'm going to tell you later why that story matters and why you too have a story. Maybe it's a story about on the flight line, the crew was gassing up the C-130 and something. Maybe it's about something in a combat zone. I don't know, but I want you to think about a story that you tell your friends or you talk about over the just something that emerges all the time. For me, that story is what emerges all the time when I think about my active duty. I got to meet President Bush. I got to meet in my wall. I have pictures of movie stars, you name everybody. Those stories pale in comparison to that moment. I don't ever, in fact, this is the first time I mentioned, I have a picture with me and President Bush, um, W, right behind, it's right over here, actually. It's blurred out. I don't ever talk about that. That's kind of a cool story, but that doesn't matter. Hiring people, hiring managers and going out there and look, they don't give a shit about who you met, what you did, the cool stuff. They give a shit about why it matters, what you're going to do for them, but even more importantly, how you frame it so that they can't say no to you. Stories matter. Jordy mentioned I was a ghostwriter, and I've always had an affinity for words. I'm going to shift gears here. So my company was acquired. It was bought. We built it. Big company. It was doing 50 million a year every year. It grew from just me to hundreds of employees. We had some of the biggest, largest federal contracts, healthcare related. Now it's usually through the DHA or the Defense Health or the agencies change. Department of War, which was DoD back then. Uh, the company was acquired. And again, I share that very openly because, again, I was a college flunky who just knew there was something more. I had drive, I had motivation. The military gave me esprit de corps, discipline, the things that I needed. They gave me a lousy skill of radio operator, but they gave me the intangibles. Those are the things I want you to think about as we continue the conversation. The intangibles, not the things on your chest, not the cool awards or the plaques, the intangibles, the things employers want. So I loved writing. When my company was purchased, I was no longer a CEO. So I dove back into writing and I started writing. Long story short is I really found my true passion of writing memoirs. I wrote some memoirs. I'm under non-disclosures because a couple of them hit bestseller status, but a couple of memoirs. One of them was for a military veteran. Wonderful story, wonderful woman. And I had the honor, the privilege of writing her story. And her story hit bestseller. I wrote a few of them. And here's the thing is the calling, the reasons why a lot of you are here, the reasons why that keep me going, the reasons why I think Jordy keeps inviting me back is because the calling or that tap or the voice, or for me, it's God, has a bigger plan. And I know this isn't it. So here's where Medcentrek comes in. So I had built a company in the federal space, very unique space. And by the way, the government buys everything. If anybody's ever interested in how to do any things in the federal space, government spends billions upon trillions now, actually, with the one big beautiful bill. But a lot of opportunity there. But I digress. The ghostwriting was great. I love it. To this day, I still write every day. Just like some people go to the gym, some people have their morning coffee. For me, writing is a daily routine. I have a newsletter I write every single day. It's reps for me. It keeps my mind sharp, keeps me going, keeps my pen. I have a pen with me all the time. It's something I do regardless. But I knew there was something more. And I had all this experience having built a company in the federal space from nothing to CEO to be acquired by another large group of private investors. And I started mentoring young companies. Jordy touched on that, working with Entrepreneurs Organization. I started working and mentoring young entrepreneurs. And one of them really rung my bell. She was a young founder. Uh, Her name is Megan, and she's the CEO of Medcentrek. And we were friends for about 6 years. She's been in the government industry for about 10. And that's irrelevant. What's relevant is that I knew there was going to be something on my path, something different. And long story short, last year, as her company started to have some traction, I went for mentor. We came to an agreement. She said, "You want to join me? I need a VP. I need somebody to help take this, lock arms and to take this kind of to the proverbial next stage." And so I jumped back into the corporate world November 3rd of 2025. So I've been officially back in the corporate space for about I don't know how many months that is. Five? Where are we? February? 4 months? Here's the beauty of it, though. Something for everybody to keep in mind is uh, when I announced it on LinkedIn, the transition that I was going to be joining this company as a VP. Of course, a lot of my colleagues and friends and cohorts and fellow CEOs from back in the days and entrepreneurs said, "Dude, you're probably going to be busy." And so they called to schedule coffee meetings with me. That's because they said, "I need to get your time before you get too busy." And I'm like, that's not how it works. You see, here's the thing is all of you, you get to control your time. I get it. You might go into an 8 to 5 job. It might happen, but you get to choose which one. One of the big reasons I chose to jump back into the corporate space was because one, I've known the founder. Two, because this while it's 8 to 5, I don't sit here for 8 hours a day pecking away. There's a lot of freedom. There's a lot of um, I I have control over my time. Something to think about as each of you thinks about the transition you're going to make. Think about what it is you want, the life that you want to create. For me, I needed to have some freedom. I still have a couple of writing clients that I work with, but I needed to have some latitude, some freedom. And plus, we work from home. That's another great perk. Megan, in fact, I have a call with her. We have a daily call every single day. But I'm going to pause there real quick before I go back to the story part. Does anybody have any questions, comments, feedback at all? I haven't, I'm not looking at the chat at all, but anybody at all? I think Jordy just actually put my LinkedIn profile in there. Maybe just add this before I see Christopher S. his hand up. Please connect. Your network is your net worth is your network, and your network is your net worth. The connections are vitally important. I saw Jordy do a post on LinkedIn. I don't know why it popped up into my feed recently about building your LinkedIn profile, your connections is important. I believe it's important. You never know who you're going to meet there. You never know who's going to be scrolling through and see something that Victor's offering, that Christopher mentions, that Anthony. These are just the names I see. I can't pronounce the other one. I can't pronounce that one in the middle there, but your network is your net worth. My LinkedIn connection is there. Please use it. You don't have to if you don't want to. And just for clarity's sake, I'm an introvert. I'm the person who never connects with people. The only time I'm a situational extrovert, meaning unless I'm asked to talk, I'm just sitting here at my desk, doing my thing, reading a book, writing my stuff, doing my, that's it. So by all means, he dropped the link in there. Feel free to connect. Any questions I can answer offline after this or anytime. Christopher, what's up?
Well, I must say, I really enjoyed listening to your personal story and what it meant to be a nurse, especially during the time of after 9/11 throughout the war on terror. So, there must have been some times when you felt like it might have gotten a little too hard for you, especially when you witnessed some of those who are injured in battle. So, I was wondering, um, I know you love the job, but sometimes there are even moments where the job can get too much, and if you wanted to know if you could do something else. So, what exactly did you do in your personal time that helped you come back to work feeling refreshed and ready?
That's a great question, Christopher. I'm reflecting back to when I was at Walter Reed, and again, it wasn't, I don't have combat stories, but I have stories of young troops. Again, it was over and over. Some of them, they stick with you. But so the things I did specifically is this was an unaccompanied tour, which all of you know, I couldn't take my family with me to Washington, and it wasn't far. I mean, it's a hop, skip, and a jump. But my kids and wife stayed in Texas. I went to DC, and when I was off, I did a few things. I participated in CrossFit, which was it's brutal enough that it takes your mind off anything except the pain of the workout, and jujitsu. And it's ironic, but I recently got back in jujitsu just last year. But those I participated in active, heavy sports to keep my mind off things. But yeah, that's what I did. Of course, I read a lot and stuff, but that's what took my mind off of work, the day-to-day work.
Oh,
It's something about the question's interesting. I'm looking at I have notes on other screens. So just so you all know, there's not somebody chatting with me. Um, because when one thinks about their stories as during your active duty time, and again, some of you may have been in combat situations. I never have. The fact is this: there's a lot of managers out there, leaders out there, hiring personnel, HR, the people who are going to be receiving your resumes and considering you for hire. A lot of times they want to hear that. and they want to hear about the combat stories, or sometimes, some of them even go to the point where they want to hear gory details. And, as a nurse, people sometimes want to hear some of that. And that's not what it's about. And even to the extent that some, not that they can, but PTS, it's a real thing. Whether you served overseas or not, it's a real thing. And these are things also to keep in mind. So I took some notes because sometimes they want to hear about combat. And here's for me, I was never in combat, like I shared. And there's ways to sometimes reframe that or pivot it. If you were sitting in front of somebody and there was great rapport, and they suddenly said, "Do you tell me about being, overseas or this and that?" And you can feel the excitement, like they want to hear how you picked up the M16 and you rushed through the door and you this and whatever. You know, I wasn't in combat. My story, I wasn't in combat, sir or ma'am, but I worked with the consequences of it every day. Every day. What that taught me was this, sir or ma'am, was how to stay calm, was how to communicate clearly and lead people under real stress, which is exactly how I approach high pressure situations. Here's why that works. One, because that's what they want to hear. They don't really want to hear about how you drew your nine and charged down. That's for books and movies. The truth is, they are looking to you to fill a position. You stay calm under pressure. You can lead under duress. You know how to communicate clearly. It shows them honesty. It shows them compassion. It shows them that there's immediate transferable value to your skill, combat or not. So they want to know the gory details. What's the worst thing you ever saw? Because I get that. I get that. And again, I was a trauma nurse in big city ERs too. And I've seen some real shitty things, like ugly things. Not that any of you haven't, but you see the best and worst of humanity in an inner city ER. What's the worst thing you ever seen, Rick? And so I actually took some notes on this because people might ask these things. They want to know the dirt of the job, and you just want the job. You want the work. You want the position. You want to prove yourself because you're about to leave the service. I've seen enough to know that. So when somebody asks me that, I can say something like, I've seen enough to know that drama isn't what makes somebody effective. It's not. Drama is not what makes somebody effective. What matters is how you respond. What matters is how I responded as a young officer when things got tough. And that's where I built my strength. That will go a much longer way than telling some story about kicking in a door, unless, of course, you're having a beer with the founder or something like that. But here's then what you say. Here's then what's something you might be able to reply with what I just shared, and then say, would it help? Would it help if I shared how that shows up in my work today? What possible employer would not want to hear your response to that? Some jobs may not be stressful. You're not going to go into combat zones, but knowing if I'm an employer, and here soon at Medcentrek, we're building our teams out. We are going to hire people. I want cool, calm, collected communicators. I don't want people who are going to panic. The government's a fishy client. The government's you all know, you work for the government. The government might even go to another shutdown here soon. I'm being very apolitical, just to be clear, but I work with the government. I know that the government can create a lot of stress, undue or otherwise, within an organization. I want to be around people who can handle it, who can deal with it. I want to be around people who didn't have to kick in doors and did all these things, but I want to know how you fared while you did it. I want to know what you learned from that experience. Um, I have a lot of other notes on there, but I just want you to be thinking about a few things. The story you like to tell, cool, fun, or otherwise. Why that matters to a potential employer. And here's what I want to say. I'm going to bring in one final piece here is when I think about those things, me personally, for me, storytelling is very natural. It's again, wordsmithing, writing, it's always been part of who I am. So for me, telling the stories and reframing them, it's very natural. And then, of course, having been a CEO and hired a lot of people, these are things I've learned, but I can probably, I think I'm getting a lot of my spidey senses are for a lot of folks, maybe a lot on this call, it's not natural. It may not be intuitive. It may come to the point where you might actually hear one of these questions in an interview and be thinking, oh Jesus, what the hell did Rick say? What was Rick saying? So what I did on several calls ago when Jordy brought me on is I had to think of a framework, if you will. Um, every branch has their own jargon, right? We all have some SOPs, we all have some acronym that I don't know what the modern day acronyms are, but being military, I'm like, what really resonates with somebody who's in the service? And I'm like, acronyms. Because if we have an acronym, then we can break it apart. So I called mine the STAR framework. It's STARR. And I'll share the document with anybody who wants it because once you have that story, the one that kind of maybe defines a little bit about who you are and what you did in the service, then you can use the STAR framework and begin to tell your story in a more profound way to any hiring manager out there. I'm peeking at my notes again because I'm going to tell you what the STAR framework is, and then I have a Word document that I can share with Jordy and he can send it out to y'all. Uh, I would highly recommend as somebody who's hired hundreds of people, that I would highly recommend that one gets their story down and it becomes part of how you naturally talk. Just make it part of your daily routine, the story you're going to tell. So it starts with the star is let me see. It's situation, tension, action, result, and reflection. So now I want you to remember the story I told you about Walter Reed. That's the way I told you that story was as if we were just having a beer, or you were just coming over to grab a sandwich or just hang out. Or I happened to see you walking down the street and you say, Rick, tell me that the way I shared it with you was just the way I would normally tell anybody that story. It's very profound to me. So how do I take that same exact story, wrap this framework around it and make sure that it impacts a hiring personnel, HR, or somebody who's interviewing me in such a way that they're like, I've got to have this guy. So here's the thing. Situation. I described my situation. I was a trained ER trauma nurse. I was a civilian nurse turned Army nurse. I was part of a forward surgical team. I had all the identifiers. I had cut my chops. I was ready. I was ready to be sent wherever to the most austere environments. The situation, my orders came in. Finally, I'm going to Washington. That was the situation. That's basically what I said to you. That doesn't make anybody want to hire you. That's why I want you to think about the situation of the story that you're thinking about. My take from my situation was I thought the Army had made a mistake. Now let's go to the T part, tension. Usually some sort of internal conflict, external action. Okay, now I'm putting on my storyteller hat, but every great story, every great uh, book or movie, especially the thriller ones, have this. There's some sort of tension there, right? Even if you've watched Hallmark Channel, there's tension between the lovers, there's tension between the good guys and bad guys. How do we do that with the story about Rick being at Walter Reed? How do we do that with your story? So here's how you do it, because here's what I said. I trained for combat zones. I said that. I trained to be far forward. I trained to be at the point of injury, outside of the cache, way far forward. I trained to be at the point of impact. Instead, I was sent to 58, where there's brand new nurses, brand new lieutenants. We don't wear scrubs, we wear ACUs. See the way I even described it? There's tension. I trained to do this. I was sent to do that. The emotion I felt was that I wasn't just being reassigned. I felt I was being sidelined. Y'all feel the tension in that? It's the same story I told, but the way I pulled that piece out, I wasn't just being reassigned. I was being sidelined. That's how I felt. Now, don't tell me that doesn't create tension. Like already I'm reflecting back going, well, why would they do that though? Like even today I'm thinking, why would they send me to Ward 58 instead of like to Iraq? Iraq was the hot spot there, a little before Afghanistan. Now let's go to action. Okay, of the STAR framework. We already talked about the situation. We talked about the tension, talked about the action. And I'm pulling this just from the story I told you. I told you about a 2-minute story. I told you about when you talk about the action part, this is where, as a storyteller, slow down. This is where you slow it down a little bit. This is where you control the pace because this is now the heart. This is the heartbeat of your story. I told you about the first day on the floor. I told you about the knock on the door. I told you about me walking in my first day on the floor, the knock on the door. I told you about the young private who tries to stand up because he saw my bar, my rank. I told you about his mother holding his hand. And then I told you that I realized in this action piece, he was missing an arm, an ear, an eye, and part of one of his legs. There was a critical choice I had to make in that moment, a critical choice. One was, first of all, I stopped him. I stopped him. Do not stand up. Get back in the bed. And I introduced myself as his nurse. You see, it's not always about combat because this wasn't combat, but it was war. It was war. Suddenly I realized this was why I was sent there. And a lot of it was internal. A lot of it was me having this. And that's why the question that was Christopher asked was kind of spot on because he said, how did you deal with that? How did you deal, Rick, with your war? And I did jujitsu, I did CrossFit. So his question was kind of like looking into a crystal ball. It's almost like he knew I was going to say this. But the action part is where you get to control the pace. And everything I just shared with you on action, I told you in my 2-minute story, right? I did every single piece, just in my story. Result. So here's where some people get it turned around and otherwise, because a lot of times we want to pin metrics on our results. And as a business owner, I'm in tune with metrics. I want to know number of sales. I want to know revenue numbers. I want to know the things that drive the business. But a lot of times when you're telling these stories, especially as relates to your time and service, we want the human impact, not the metrics. I want you to think about that. We want the human impact, not the metrics, because you're going to go into a job, into a role, and you're likely going to be working with, alongside, interfacing with other humans. So the result in my story was I understood at that moment my true role, my real role, and I shared that with you guys. I understood that it was never about adrenaline, heroics, or combat or boom booms. Never. It was about fucking dignity. That's what it was about. The story I told you wasn't about boom boom combat injury. It was about dignity. It was about care. It was about presence. It was about leadership without rank. You feel me? See, I pulled all of these things from my 2-minute story about knocking on that door and being so angry about going to Walter Reed. The line that you need to land when you're thinking about your star framework story is at that moment rewired how I understood service. For me, it did. For me, it absolutely rewired my take on what service truly is. You guys feel that? I told you just a story about how I was bummed, but the story rewired me. It rewired how I think about giving back, how I think about sometimes I don't know why I'm being sent to do something. I just know I have to show up and do it to the best of my ability. So now we're going to go to the final R, the reflection. This is where the insights you just shared in your story become transferable in the reflection. By this time, and you don't need to be a great storyteller. That's what the framework is for. The framework is designed to help you tell your story. You don't need to be a storyteller and an orator and have a microphone. You just need to know that these are the points you need to hit with your story of service. The transferable insight is what the employers want to hear, the final R, the reflection. This is what they want. This is why you're there. This is why you're across the table from them, why they hit you up on LinkedIn and said, tell me something I don't know. What they're really saying is, tell me why I should bring you onto the team. Here are my 3 big points. My reflection. Leadership is not location-based. I told you guys I wanted to go overseas. I told you I'd never went to the sandbox. For me, that was the pinnacle. I would not have, I used to think I had to be there to be the best possible nurse. And my reflection was leadership is not location based. It's not. Huge, huge slap in the face for me. Huge. Service is not job title dependent. Sure, I was a captain when I left there. I was an O3, but I was just a nurse. And I made sure every one of the troops I took care of, whatever service, we had them all, Army, Navy, Air Force, everybody came through Walter Reed. There were times where I didn't even want to have rank because I was there because I was there for them. I was there for them. Service is not job title dependent. Let that sink in because that has a lot of depth to it. The last one is my value wasn't defined by where I stood. My value was defined by how I showed up. You're going to have some shitty days at work. You're going to want to call in sick. You're going to wonder why you even said yes to the job. Your value isn't defined by your attitude. It's defined by how you fucking show up every day. And each of you have worn a uniform and you know that to be true. I took those three lessons from 2006 and 7, and they have shaped me today. That's how I got, I believe that's how we grew our company. It wasn't because I was the smartest business guy, because I had super great contacts. It was because I understood leadership isn't location based. Service is not dependent on my title, and my values defined by how I show up. And we show up at Medcentrek now. I'm going to talk about Medcentrek because we are a warrior first company. Whenever I sit across from a contracting officer, somebody from the government, Department of War, Department of the Army, and we show them our capabilities, here's what we can do for you. I put that aside and I say, my story. And I tell them, this is why you want us taking care of troops. Because we are warfighter first, because I fucking lived it. And I will bring that to the table each and every day. Your story matters more than you guys will ever know. Do not ever be afraid to tell your story, but make sure you tell it in a way that it transfers into the role you're seeking. Does that make sense so far? All right.
Absolutely.
I just gave you
Wow,
I just gave you guys a lot. So I'm
that
gonna
was awesome. Oh my gosh, buddy. I got a couple people who have volunteered so graciously to share their very quick story with you to get your feedback. Are you cool with that?
bring it on. Let's do it.
All right, Matt, you want to go first? And then Jody volunteered to go next.
You want me to follow that?
You got him.
Now I'd like to withdraw. So yeah, a little bit ago, Jordy had us uh throw a prompt into Chat GPT to help us kind of craft our own little tell us about yourself spiel. So I'm going over mine for the second time now. All right, so I'm excited about this representative role because sales to me, it's not about pushing product, it's about solving problems and building trust. Honestly, if I won the lottery tomorrow, I'd want to do this job. I'd just be taking calls from a beach chair instead of an office. I spent 20 years in the Air Force as an operations manager, where success depended on leadership, process improvement, and clear stakeholder communication. I led teams, fixed broken systems, and worked with everyone from senior leaders to frontline operators to deliver results. Skills that translate directly to effective sales. What I bring is discipline, accountability, and the ability to listen, ask the right questions, and follow through. I know some candidates may have more direct sales experience, but they won't match my level of commitment. When I believe in the mission, I bring relentless effort and full ownership to helping the company succeed. This isn't just a job to me, it's a career where I know I can make a real impact.
Got it. I'm speak freely. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And I'm going to do this. I don't have constructive criticism, and I'm not saying I'm going to speak freely and asking permission because I'm going to tear things apart. I do it because once you give me permission, then it's. I bet that when I said, "Can I speak freely?" You're probably going, "Oh fuck, what the fuck?" So, Matt, you have a heavy resume, and I mean you've done a lot. 20 years caught my ear right away. Problems and trust from your first couple lines caught my ear right away. And where my ear started to think, where I started to think about, let me do this. I'm going to put myself in the position of somebody who's looking to hire somebody like you. Because when we grow our teams, we're going to hire project managers. We're going to hire even people who will work on site, not GS, but government contractors. And having had interviewed a lot of them, especially veterans, is I hear a lot of what you just shared, the bullet points, the 20 years, the problem solver, the leadership, the process improvement. And going back to the STAR framework, and again, the STAR framework came at the end. You already had what you shared pre-prepared. So what I want you to think about is the things you just shared, they matter. They do. That's going to be on the resume I've already read. Probably, right? I can
Yeah.
probably see that on your LinkedIn page. And if I'm a good hiring manager, I've already scoured your LinkedIn. I've scoured your socials. I want to know who that is. I want to know what you post about. I want to know all the things about you. So now that I've done my due diligence and I already know a lot about you from socials, from and hopefully everybody here has a social profile on LinkedIn. I've scoured, looked up. Now that I know you, you need to be able to share with me the things I don't know, the things I don't know. So I would imagine, surmise that what you shared, I could already have gleaned from a social, from your resume, from your CV, from whatever. And that's where the STAR framework comes in. What I want to challenge you to do, Matt, not right this second, but later on, is to think about the STAR framework. And again, I'll gladly send this to Jordan. He can give it to you, so you can think about the way I shared my story. Think about us. Think about a time when you were active in your Air Force. I see a USAF project manager. Again, it doesn't have to be in a combat zone. You heard me, Walter Reed, Ward 58, back in 2006 and 7. Think about the situation. Think about the tension. First, I want you to think about just the story itself. And I would even compel you to either talk it out and transcribe it so you actually have it. And then when you look at the STAR framework, you can actually chunk it out. Keep it super simple. What was the situation? Maybe there was a logistics snafu and you were in Kuwait and you had to get 20 pallets of things over to something. And the tension was if you didn't do it, there was going to be some Marines who were going to be pissed off. And again, I'm making this up, but it's the story. And then you talk about how you overcame it, how you had to suddenly realize there was a broken system and you had to dive into the system. And with the help of your team and reorganizing I would imagine if you're 20 years, you got to be at least E6 to E9, probably somewhere in that range. You probably have subordinates. Talk about how to rally the team to make sure the mission was accomplished. The 20 pallets got to the end state. And here's why that matters to you, Mr. Employer. Because you've done your research on them, you now know how to link your successes, what you just did, to the job that you want. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate it. Sorry, my dog's going crazy in the
All right.
background here.
How many,
But yeah,
thank you,
thank you.
Matt, for doing that. Rick, how many stories do you recommend each person have prepared and ready to fire? Should there be like some for this? This will convey my persistence. This story will convey my coachability, like having some different character traits that,
If that's a great question, Jordy. If so, we're talking about the transition phase, going from active duty to through the program, Skill Bridge, Seven Eagle, into some sort of work somewhere. I would have one story. It doesn't mean you tell that story all the time. You may have other situations where a different story matters. There are other stories I have that I talk about from back in the military days, but the one that has the biggest impact, the one like as an example, Jordy, I tell that same story to Seven Eagle every single time.
yeah.
I never change it, and that's because it has the most relevance. So the relevance here is this my story and how you can use the STAR framework with your story to get the job. So to answer Jordy's question, I would think about one story where you had to overcome something in uniform and think about the STAR framework and nail that thing down. Make it so it just comes out naturally because the person across from me, whether they're from a logistics firm, a government contracting firm, or something, they're looking to you because of a certain skill set. That one story with the STAR framework will break it down. So at the very end, the reflection, here is why you need me. Here is why I'm the only person for this.
Yeah.
Go with one story for this.
Great. All right, Jody, you ready to go?
I am.
Got a penner. Hold on.
Okay. For me, becoming a radiology tech isn't just a career choice. It's something that generally excites me. I've wanted to do this for many years, and it finally feels like it's the right time to step into it. After serving 22 years in the Air Force as a mission system operator, I've learned how to stay calm under pressure, take care of people, and keep the mission moving no matter what. And honestly, after 2 decades of that, hopefully the X-ray room would be a little more peaceful for me. This is work I would do even if I won the lottery, truly. I'd still show up the next morning because helping patients on some of their hardest days gives me a sense of purpose. And I know there may be candidates with more technical experience, but no one is going to outpassion me. I'm great with people, I'm patient, and I'm compassionate when others are struggling. I know how to meet people where they are and help them feel safe and supported. This isn't just a job for me, it's work that fits who I am. And if you bring me onto your team, you're gonna get someone who shows up early, stays late, and will try their hardest to make the whole day run smoother for everyone.
Sure. I'm furiously writing notes. Yeah, okay, if I speak freely, Jody?
Of course, yes.
Okay. If you bring me onto your team, get the word if out of your vocabulary.
Okay.
The word should be when. If you are sitting across from them at a hiring, whether it's an HR, wherever it is, and you're interviewing, do not leave any shred of doubt that you're not the right person. So if you bring me onto when you bring me onto your team.
Okay.
So that caught my ear. And it catches my ear because you know who I want on my team? I want people who have already believed they've won. And I'm gonna tell a little bit more, but here's what I mean by that. Likely everybody here has played some sort of sport, whether it's volleyball, high school, college, whatever. You've done something, football, baseball, cricket. Have you ever, and has anybody here ever shown up in uniform to the team and said, "Yeah, I don't know if we're gonna pull this one off today"? You know? No, no. You show up to win every day, every game. Because if you don't, guess what team you're on? You're on the bench. You're not even in uniform. Show up that way to life every day. Every day that our eyes open is a gift. You won the lottery. So you guys use the lottery. I guess that's part of the questions. Your eyes are open today. You won the fucking lottery today. You're alive. If you bring me on, no. When you bring me on. The other thing was meet people where they are. Calm under pressure, keep the mission moving. I was writing so fast. Oh, here's the other thing. You said there might be more candidates with more experience. Get rid of that line. Get rid of that line. Do not bring self-deprecation into the conversation where you want to win. If I'm on the soccer field and I know that fullback's better, I don't say like, damn, I know that guy's better than me. Fuck no. I charge hard right into him. Approach it that way. There are more candidates with more experience. No, X that out, not just on the paper, but out of your psyche. You've done 22 years. There is nobody better than you, Jody. Nobody. You don't need to go in there with the attitude of nobody's better. There should be a temperance of humility. The other thing is, I'll say the same thing I said with Matt. 22 years is a lot of experience. You've been there, done that. You've likely wrote the SOP, probably changed some SOPs. I'm going to go back to the framework and the story. I probably could have seen all this on your resume, your CV. I probably know people, especially if you're in healthcare. I probably know somebody who knows you, but likely, I don't know. Where are you at? What part of the country?
I'm in Oklahoma. I'm actually going to go back to school, I think, to do radiology because I was air crew. I haven't even done it yet. So this is where like my dilemma is right now. But yeah. I'm going to go back to school to do the radiology to start.
I'd find that story, Jody, the story where you actually met people where they at. You said it in a bullet point. Now tell me about it. When you say you're calm under pressure, you kept the mission moving. Tell me about it. Find something. In 22 years, you've got to, I'm sure there's gobs of stories. Something you talk about over, at the mess hall or the PX, whatever, and say, remember that time? And then you high five your comrades and you all go. That's usually the story. The story when you see one of your friends 2 years after retirement and you say, remember that time? That's usually the story that's going to bubble to the surface that you can use for the framework. Let the bullet points talk on the CV. When
Okay.
you're given the mic, and same thing with Matt and everybody here, talk about the things that they can't read. Talk about the things that are going to set you apart.
Okay. Thank you.
So it's not being afraid to find those specifics, even if it doesn't relate exactly, and just figure out a way to tie it in.
Yeah.
I love it. Who has a last question for Rick? Jody, thank you, and Matt, thank you. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Hi, good morning. I did thank you for talking with us, Rick. That's very inspirational, your story and how you're able to bullet point it and just make it like stand out more like the essence of of the meal, you know what I mean? Trying to give it all. But I wrote a little bit down about your star. Is there any way that you can share that with us? I know I put it out in the chat and a few people liked it, and we would like to get more information about your star framework.
Yeah, I can whatever Jordy, whatever's easiest. I can send you a document, Jordy, and you can or
Yeah, if you have it handy, can you throw it in the chat right now?
yeah, let me see if I do.
Are
And
you
also
cool doing that?
yeah, let me see if I have it handy. And if we connected on LinkedIn and you happen to not grab this, um, just hold on a sec. I thought I had it. Yeah, let me grab it real quick. Hold on. I have it in one of my Mac screen is a mess. Okay,
Well,
I found
we see here. I just want to say I am a little bit gangster.
it. Little big gangster. Okay, let me drop it into the chat here. And
Yeah, and may everyone connect to him. He's got an amazing newsletter. I read it every day. It's so good. It's so inspiring. He's always got a good message in there. So make sure to check that out. And
it should have showed up. Did y'all see it?
Yeah, we see it. Yes, thank you.
Okay. You'll notice a few things on page this was with the prior group. I actually challenged them. So when you open it up, whoops, sorry, my phone's going nuts. When you see it on page 2, but if you want to do the challenge, it's up to you. But it was a 72-hour challenge and I dropped it into the document. So if you see it, the challenge, it actually asks you the challenges to tag Seven Eagle and myself on LinkedIn when you come up with your story. And if you do that, I will absolutely read it. And if you would like and you ask for it, I will give you feedback. So page 1 is the framework in its essence. Page 2 is a challenge. And here's the thing. I'm gonna put this out there. I told you I was gonna be no holds barred. You're gonna get the no shitter. You all are transitioning. You're going from active duty into some civilian job or government, wherever it is. This is the time to not be shy. This is the time where you either do it or you don't. This is the time where if somebody gave me a challenge that's going to get me to the proverbial table better and overcome the mission or achieve the mission, I would take it. I would take it every day and twice on Sundays. So there's a challenge on there. If we're connected on LinkedIn, by all means, tag me and
I
I'll
love it, Rick. And as you guys grow, what sort of roles do you anticipate having over there at
no,
Medcentrek?
the first ones we just placed people in Guam, of all places, Guam.
Mhm.
And as we grow, we'll be looking for people in finance, all the way from not yet today, but from the CFO all the way down to kind of the bookkeeping. We'll be looking for people in HR. Um, we'll be looking for recruiters, especially people who have a real skill set for recruiters, and then project management. So as we open up contracts across the country, we'll be looking for people who understand project management, but more specifically people management, because the
Yeah,
projects are interfacing with employees and the government, and everybody here knows how to work for the government. So
no doubt, no doubt. Rick, you are the best, buddy. I love it. Each time I listen, I get more value out of it. So thank you for giving back so much to this amazing group and
my pleasure, Jordan. My pleasure,
appreciate
y'all.
it
Everybody
greatly.
here. Appreciate
Take care,
that.
buddy. Bye-bye.
Peace.
All right.